Welcome back to the Kickstarter Weekly, everyone. This week's video, normally this is a weekly video, but this week's video is covering a 3-week period. It's the games that are funding between December the 26th and January the 15th. And the reason that I've done that is there's only one campaign that I want to cover that's completing funding during that period. It's just a very slow time over the holidays. There aren't a lot of new crowdfunding games that are launching, and certainly not ones with, a lot of money behind them or the kinds of games that I'd want to normally recommend. So that's going to be true over the next few weeks as well. Right now, there is nothing currently out that is going to be completing its funding anytime soon. I know there are more games coming that will be launching in January, but I probably won't put out another video until those games are completing their funding. So I'm guessing it will be at least another 2 weeks for another video, which means this is a great time to like and subscribe because I'm not sure when the next video will be coming out. However, as soon as campaigns are rolling again and we're getting them on a regular basis, these videos will go back to being weekly videos. Another thing you may want to check out is my website, thinkoutsideTheBoard.com. And normally there I do daily posts on all the games that have been launching the previous day. Now again, that hasn't been as active lately because there just aren't a lot of games that are being launched right now during the holidays. So that's on a little bit of a slowdown. But once that starts to pick back up and you see games starting to appear there, that will mean that videos are forthcoming, because normally that's the first stop, right? When games launch, I profile them on the website, and then I pick the best of those games to profile in these videos when it comes time for those campaigns to complete their funding. In fact, after you subscribe, you can hit the alarm bell, and then you will definitely receive a notification upon the publication of future videos, so you absolutely won't miss anything that way. Now, as always, my videos are bookmarked, tabbed, so if there's a specific game or a category that you want to go down and look at and you want to skip through part of the video, you can do that. Also, in the description of the video, I have links to the campaigns. So in this video, I'm only profiling one campaign. It's on Kickstarter, but if you don't want to go searching around, you're interested in this campaign, you can just go down into the description of the video, click on the name of that campaign, and it will take you right to the campaign itself, and you could back it there or take a deeper look at it. Another good reason to subscribe and sign up for notifications right now is that while things are slowed down, I'm continuing to work on getting more equipment in, completing my upstairs studio space, and so then as things get rolling again, you're going to see a lot more videos from me of a higher quality, new camera equipment, and I'll be relaunching my teach and review series and putting out a lot more videos along those lines. I'll also be launching a Twitch channel where I'll be streaming a lot of solo play, some big campaign games, and even some Euro games. So things are on a little bit of a slowdown right now, but as things pick up later this quarter, they're going to pick up in a big way, and there's going to be a lot more content coming out from this channel. All of that said, let's get to our one currently running campaign of the week. And that is for a campaign called Riftlands and Guild Academies of Valeria. This is actually for a new expansion for Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria and a new game called Guild Academies of Valeria. And they've packaged these two games, one game and one expansion, into a single campaign. It will be completing its funding on Friday, January 6th. Now, this campaign launched with a minimum required funding goal of $10,000. They're currently at about $85,000, so that's about 8.5 times its minimum required funding goal. Guild Academies of Valeria, the new game, plays 1 to 4 players in about 90 to 120 minutes. And Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria Riftlands, the expansion for Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, plays 2 to 5 players, also in about 90 to 120 minutes. Both of these games are of a medium-heavy complexity. They're just kind of over the line, though, from medium-light to medium-heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, of the two projects that we're talking about, Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria is a worker placement game. There's been one expansion put out previously for it. That expansion is also available here through this campaign, and that's essentially 4 modular mini expansions. So you can mix and match those, put them into the game if you want. The new expansion, Riftlands, is going to give you asymmetric powers for your factions. Every faction will have 2 of these powers. So you'll start the game with one of these powers, and then during the game, when you complete a battle plan, you will unlock the other second power. The other game, the new game, Guild Academies of Valeria, has a ton of mechanics associated with it. The biggest one's probably action selection, but it's also got dice drafting, tile drafting, dice manipulation, resource management, and engine building. Now, both games are designed by Stan Kordonsky, who's previously designed Dice Hospital, Endless Winter, Paleo-Americans, and Rurik Dawn of Kiev, and the art on both games is by Mahalo Dmitrievsky, better known as the Miko. He's done art for such games as Architects of the West Kingdom, Imperium Classics, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Both games are being published by Daily Magic Games. They're best known for Quests of Valeria, Valeria Card Kingdoms, and Villages of Valeria. There are a lot of different pledges in this because we're dealing with an expansion, a new game, and some additional content. So for $19, you can pledge Rise of the Titans. That is just the Rise of the Titans expansion. That is the one that has been available previously. It's got 4 modules in it, 4 mini expansions, and you can mix and match them as you want. So this pledge level might be for somebody who already has the game, but didn't pick this up before. This is your way to now get this expansion if that's all you want. For $29, you can pledge Riftlands, and that will give you the newest expansion for Shadow Kings of Valeria. For $48, you can pledge expansions only. That will give you both of those expansions. Again, both of those are for Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, the older one and the newest one, the one that is new with this campaign. For $49, you can pledge Guild Academies of Valeria. That is the new game. But if for some reason you're not interested in that, you're only really interested in Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria and you don't want any expansions for it, that has its own pledge. $49, Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, you can pledge just for the base game for that game. $79, just the new stuff, will give you the new game, Guild Academies of Valeria, and the new expansion, Riftlands, for Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. $89, everything Shadow Kingdoms will give you the base game, Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, the first expansion, that's the one with the 4 modular expansions in it, and the new expansion, Riftlands. And then for $139, there's an all-in, although this one I believe had a limited number of copies available, and they may already be sold out, but that basically gives you everything for Shadow Kingdoms, and then also gives you the new game, Guild Academies of Valeria. Finally, Daily Magic Games is planning on delivering this project in December of 2023. Now, that is the only campaign that I'm profiling this week. I like to pick and choose the campaigns, and this is the only one during this 3-week period that I thought was really worthy of passing along to you all. As I mentioned before, it may be a couple weeks before I come back with a new video because I want to wait until I have some worthy projects to share. And right now I know there are new projects coming in January, but there's nothing that's even currently launched at this point. So those projects need to launch, and then they need to run for whatever their campaign is going to be, a week or two, and get to the point that those campaigns are completing their funding. Before I wrap the video, I'd quickly like to talk about the new acquisitions into my collection. I think these games are notable because these may be games that you want me to make teach and review videos for. So if any of these are of interest to you as I go through them, you can put a comment below, let me know, and I will pop it up to the top of my production queue as I get going making teach and review videos in the new year. The final selection, the played games, are basically just as a litmus test so you can see what I like, why I like it, and it will help give you sort of a gauge when you're looking at newer games and trying to compare, well, this is a game that Brian likes, but is it a game that I like? Hopefully that'll give you a little bit of a window into that. So the first game that's been acquired into my collection is Artisans of Splendent Vale. This was a Kickstarter. It was just delivered recently over the holidays. This is something that I backed largely with my now wife Kristen in mind. She was my fiance when I backed it. But it is a legacy game. There's even a reset pack for it. It's cooperative. It reminds me a little bit of Almanac, the Almanac series, because it's sort of like a dungeon crawler without the dungeon. Instead, you're going to be doing tasks. You're going to be completing tactical action pieces around this village to complete things and further a storyline. So you're building up this town, you're doing things around this town, and you're completing tasks to do that. So it's kind of like this adventure game without a conventional dungeon crawl. And I look really forward to playing that. That's a game that I hope to feature on Twitch once I get that up and running so that other people out there watching can experience it with us. It's a game that I think is going to have a lot of joy to it. So it's something that I'm very much looking forward to playing, and also looking forward to playing with Kristen, who I think is really going to love it. I also picked up Burncycle, and this was an add-on through the Hoplomachus Victorum campaign. This is a game from Chip Theory Games. I'd passed by it during its original Kickstarter. I think I was just short on funds at the time. But it's a game where you are controlling different robots. You're going into evil corporations. There's a large puzzly element to it, and you're just trying to infiltrate these corporations. And if you know Chip Theory Games, their games have production values which are just off the charts. Like their other games, it figures these custom chips that you use, kind of like poker chips. Also neoprene mats with holes in them so that you can plug pegs into them. You're sort of building up a character as you're doing this, getting different skills. And in this game, there's this infiltration and stealth element. So I'm really intrigued by it. This is another game that I'd really like to feature on Twitch once I get that channel up and running. And this is something that I think will really be geared towards solo play. So this will be something that I can stream whenever I want, just me running through different scenarios. I also acquired Hamlet. This was another Kickstarter game. It features tile placement, network and route building, some pick up and deliver. It's designed by David Churko, who designed a really cool little two-player game called And Then We Held Hands. That's out of print, but is great if you can find it. He also designed The Pursuit of Happiness and Petrichor. I think he has a really unique, kind of eclectic design sense. I just like his stuff a lot. So Hamlet was something that I wanted to pick up, and I also really like tile placement games. Hoplomachus, Victorum, and Remastered. It's two different games. This is again from Chip Theory Games. This was the game that I pledged when I also picked up Burncycle as an add-on. And Chip Theory Games, who probably most people know best from Too Many Bones, their first game was Hoplomachus. They did a few different iterations of it. But once they kind of moved on and they did Too Many Bones and Cloudspire and Burncycle, their production value just kept getting better and better. So Chip Theory looked back and they thought, you know, we really like the idea behind Hoplomachus, but we feel that the original game isn't quite up to the production standards of our later games. So they decided to redo their first couple games, pull them together into one game called Remastered, and give it a just kind of overall redux. And this is again a poker chip, based game, but this one focuses on gladiator arena style combat using hex tiles. So you'll be playing this usually with 2 or 3 players. You're fighting against each other. You're trying to kill the other player. I think probably what happened is when they decided to do this kind of remake of this game, knowing that they have such a big audience out there that really likes the solo play of their games, they decided, you know what, we're going to make another game. We're going to call it Victorum, and that is going to be a solo-only game, and it's very much focused on campaign play. So I picked up both of those games through this campaign, Remastered, which is the arena-style combat for 2 to 3 players, and Victorum, which is the new campaign solo game. Again, those are games, especially Victorum, that I would really like to feature on Twitch once we get that up and running later in the year. The final new addition to my collection is another Kickstarter game. It's called Oros. This was a tile placement game from a newer publisher. There's worker placement in it as well. The colors and the design of it really impressed me. It really kind of pops. And it has mechanics where you're moving tiles around on a modular board. I believe it's a 4x4, so a 16 tile grid, although it could be 25. But as you do things, you're shifting rows and columns of these tiles around, trying to move them to fulfill your personal goals and score points. And I thought the mechanics, while they're similar to things that we've seen before in games, put together in this exact way, I hadn't really seen anything that had done it that way. And again, the graphic design and just the bright colors of it really make this game pop. I think this could be a great kind of lighter game, but we'll have to see. This is something that I want to get into, play, see what I feel about it. It's not a game, I think, that's out there on everyone's radar, so it's a game that maybe would benefit from me doing a teach and review, because I don't know if you'll see other outlets doing one for this game. So there's a good chance that Oros could be sliding under a lot of people's radar right now. I intend to give it a look, and then I'll come back and let you know if it's something that you really should be seeking out or not. Okay, in the played games section, I've got 12 different games to talk about. However, I'm now playing a lot of games on Board Game Arena, and some of these games are now in regular rotation where I'll just kind of always have one game going. So I don't feel the need to talk about a lot of these games again and again. I'm just going to be updating my ratings for them, and that way you can use them as a litmus test for what kind of games I like. There are 2 games on this list that I don't think that I've talked about in detail before. They're not necessarily new to me. They're not necessarily games that I haven't played before, but they're just games that I am now playing again for the first time in a while on Board Game Arena, and so I will talk in a little bit more detail about those games. My rating for Seven Wonders is going to continue at a 6.5. My rating for Barrage, which I'm really enjoying, but the more I get into it, the more I'm seeing that it's a very mean game. There are things that you can do in that game to really kind of throw a wrench into other players' engines, and when you do that, it's really effective. It can take them a couple rounds of a 5-round game to kind of get their engine back up and running. And this is a game where you're building water networks, but you might think you just want to produce a lot of water and get to the point where you're going crazy producing a lot of water, especially in higher player count games. That's not always going to win you the game. So there's a lot more that you can do tactically in terms of what sorts of buildings that you're building and when you're producing water to score you specific goals. So the more I get into this game, the more I'm realizing the tactical element of it and also the mean element to it, which is something that players may want to know about because not everyone wants to play games that have kind of such high amounts of take that in them. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm continuing with my rating of this one at a 9.0. We'll see what happens with that as time goes on. It's got a level of complexity to it that I just really, really love in terms of how you're building your engine and how you're building this network of buildings. And it puts it right up there with Vital Lacerda games for me. And he's one of my favorite designers, if not my favorite designer. So that's high praise. As I play it more, I need to evaluate it more, because if this kind of level of take that is as inherent as it seems to be, as necessary as it seems to be, it will mean that the strategies that you're using kind of need to streamline into a certain way of playing. And that will eventually kind of limit, I think, what the game can do. So I'm aware of that element now, so I'm having to adjust some of my strategies to incorporate that more. But we'll see over time if I feel like that affects the overall kind of what you can do in the game and if it makes the gameplay too narrowly focused. But for now, I'm still really enjoying it, and I'm maintaining my score of a 9.0. I'm also maintaining my score of a 9.0 over the Castles of Burgundy. This is a game that I played 3 times this period, also on Board Game Arena. All of these were plays on Board Game Arena over the holiday season. And this is just one of my favorite Stefan Feld games. It's just got a great combination of action selection and tile placement, and there's a lot that you can do with a few actions and kind of very simple gameplay. There's a lot of strategy that comes into it and kind of tactical choices. So I really continue to like Castles of Burgundy. I think it's a real gem, and it's also a game that I think a lot of different types of gamers can enjoy. It's not too complex. that only a certain subset of gamers can pick it up, but it's got a lot of really good choices in it. So I think it's a good strategic choice for lighter gamers, gamers who want something a little more simple with less things to track. Now, one of the games that I haven't talked about at length, I think, on this channel is Great Western Trail. And I've played that 2 more times this period. I'm rating this one an 8.5. And this is a game that I own the physical copy of. I own the expansion, Rails to the North. I've owned this one for a while. I've played it over several years. And it just, the more you play it, the more I start to question which strategy I should be using. I think when people come into this game, it's a deck builder. You're kind of building up a deck of cow cards and you're running around the board. You're building buildings. You're advancing a train. You're getting different objective cards. There's a lot of different things that you can do. And I think very early on, there was this idea that the best strategy in the game was to accumulate a lot of cow cards because that will allow you to put train stations out that are further down the line, will score you more points at the end of the game, and the cow cards themselves are also worth a lot of points. However, the more I play this game, the more I see people doing really amazing things using the other 2 kinds of employees in the game, the builders and the train engineers. In fact, sometimes if I'm going for cows, I'll see a player that has sent their engine down this track and picked up all of these bonus tiles, kind of made every stop along the way. And they're obviously going into the engineer strategy really heavily. And when I see players do that and do that well, it just seems like they completely run away with the game. So this is a game that, even though I've probably played this, I don't know, at least 20 times to date, the more I play it, the more I question how well I know the game, or if I just need to completely throw out everything I know about it and start over. And I haven't yet to reach sort of a conclusive end in terms of what the best strategy is, or feeling like I have a complete end-all be-all knowledge of the game, and it's just a case of kind of executing those things well over and over. I've been playing Lost Ruins of Arnak a lot lately, and I have gotten to the point with that where there's a lot of variability in that game, but I have gotten to the point where I feel like I know the game really well, and it's just about executing what the game is doing well. But for me, strategically in Great Western Trail, there just remains questions out there. So I'm continuing my rating of Great Western Trail at an 8.5. And even though I've got so many plays in with that game, I still feel like I need more plays. And that as I give the game more plays, that score could go either up or down. But I think it says something that I have that many plays of that game, and it's still so fresh and in some ways unknown to me. And I have played a bunch of games with the expansion Rails to the North, as well as just the base game. Rails to the North just gives you even more things to do, even more opportunities. So there are kind of ways that you can spread the scoring around. And I feel like I haven't even kind of broken the code on the base game yet. So while I've played the expansion, I want to break the code on the base game before I really go heavily and start playing the expansion only. The Isle of Cats is a game I love. Now, this is a game that I feel like I've broken the code on. It's a tile placement game. There's this evil guy, Vesh, who's coming to an island. You're drafting cards, and then you're using those cards every round to place tiles, cat tiles, on your boat, and you're trying to fill up your boat. And you get bonus points at the end of the game when you place the cats in groups. There's treasures that you can put on it, and it's kind of simple in the idea behind it, but there's a lot of variability in the game. But I tend to play the game pretty well at this point, but it's a game that I feel like I fully understand, and so then it's just a case each game of how well can I execute that. But within that, I think it's a fantastic game, a fantastic card drafting game, and a fantastic tile placement game, and a fantastic combination of those two mechanics. So for me, Isle of Cats continues to score at an 8.5. Kingdom Builder, very, very simple game. It's got some area control in it. You're kind of pursuing different goals. Played it once more this period, and I'm continuing with my rating for that game of a 6.5. Lost Ruins of Arnak, I've already mentioned that. Great combination of deck builder and worker placement, and I'm continuing to rate that game a 9.0. Now, I played that game 14 more times this period, so I do feel like I've kind of gotten into a groove with that game, and I'll have to see if my rating eventually does come down over time, but I'm still really enjoying it, and there is a lot of variability because there's a front board, there's a backboard with a different track, there is an expansion that you can add 2 different tracks to the game, and that expansion adds variable player powers. So I think even once you get to the point with Lost Ruins of Arnak, if you feel like you've kind of run the course and it's getting samey for you, you can throw in this expansion, Expedition Leaders, and it's a whole new game. And it's amazing. So even if I get to the point with Lost Ruins of Arnak where I'm starting to get a little bored with it, at least in terms of physically, because they don't have Expedition Leaders on Board Game Arena yet, but physically, I can still be playing Expedition Leaders, and I see no end in sight to what that expansion can add to the game. And I also know that there's another expansion on the way. It's kind of far out, but it is on the way, maybe a year or two. But there will be another expansion coming for Lost Ruins of Arnak eventually. I've played Patchwork 2 more times, and this is a game that I do enjoy the strategy behind it, the tactical element of it. You are placing tiles on a quilt, you're building out this quilt. There are buttons on some of the tiles, and as you get more button income, you'll be able to buy better tiles. This is a game, though, I'm decreasing my rating for. I think I'm going down to a 7.5 with it, because so often your choices, what you can do in the game, is very limited and very simple. So you'll get to a point where anytime, any turn, you can only pick 3 tiles. And you may choose which of those 3 tiles to pick, not only based on what they're going to do for you, but what 3 tiles your opponent will then have. You may want to put them in a tough place where they don't have the buttons they need to buy certain tiles. But even within that, the game feels very limited to me. The choices are very kind of simple each turn and what you can choose between. And there are some games, this just kind of happens, where the way that the tiles come out, the order that the tiles come out, limits the choices that you can make. And so you're just trying to choose the best choice for you every turn. But even if you make the best choice, you may not be able to win the game at the end of the day because of the tile order. So I think it's something to be taken into account. I mean, I think you have to be playing at a pretty high level, and so does your opponent, for that to happen, where everyone's kind of making perfect decisions. But if it gets to that point where people know the game well and everyone's making perfect decisions, who may win the game may end up being almost determined by the order of the tiles when they first come out. So it's kind of an edge case, and I think a niche case for it to get to that extreme. But if you're playing the game a lot and you're playing against other people who play the game a lot, you may run into that. So it may get to the point where Patchwork has its limitations and you kind of just want to move on from it as a game, even though I think it's a fantastically fun game, has a lot of strategy, it's quick to play, easy to teach, and just inherently a lot of fun. I played Potion Explosion again this period, continue to really enjoy it. That rating is going to continue for me at a 7.5. The other new game this period is called Seasons, and this is a card drafting game. It's a game that I played on Board Game Arena a lot a few years ago before the pandemic, and then I stopped playing games on Board Game Arena for a long time. So I've just decided to go back and play Seasons again lately, and it is such a good game. It is a card drafting game. At the beginning of the game, you're going to draft essentially 9 cards, and then you choose what order to play those cards in. So you assign 3 cards to each of the 3 rounds of the game, and then there's sort of a timer that goes around, and you're going to be drafting dice every turn and using dice to put out those cards. What really makes the game so good is the way that you develop an engine between cards, kind of using cards together, and how you tactically maneuver around your dice choices and use them to your advantage. It's just a game that I think is so good. It's not a game that I have a physical copy of. I've never played a physical copy of it. I've only played it on Board Game Arena. but I love it, and I think it's great, and I'm continuing to rate this one an 8.5. Now, I played Splendor a couple more times this period. I'm continuing with my rating of that game of a 7.0, and I played Wingspan 4 more times, and I'm continuing to rate that game at an 8.5. So that concludes the played game section. The new games were Great Western Trail and Seasons. Usually I just put all the ratings up at the end, but I've been putting them up as I've been talking about them just because I'm going through some of them very quickly. So these were my ratings for the 12 different games that I got played during this period. Thank you very much for watching and spending a little time with me with this video. Again, you may want to subscribe and hit the alarm bell just because I will be coming back with a video in, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, but I'm not completely sure about that yet. It's going to be dependent upon when there are really good games that are finishing their funding that are notable enough that I want to pass them along to you. Also, check out my website, Think Outside the Board. That's also been a little bit slow lately, but that'll start to ramp up again, and that is a great first step and sort of one-step shopping just to see everything that's come out on Kickstarter the previous day, with certain caveats. Sometimes if games are very unprofessional, they won't make the website for various reasons, but almost everything that comes out there that's a board game is on the website, and then I sort of cull from those when I'm making these videos and putting the best of the best games into the videos. I'll continue to keep letting you know how progress is going on the upstairs studio, getting in new equipment, and when I finally plan to start launching the new Teach and Review series, as well as streaming on Twitch and eventually launching a Patreon. And I think that'll be really cool because that will give me an opportunity to run polls where people can help determine which Teach and Review videos I'm making and what games I'm going to be streaming. So all of that is coming. Play lots of great games over the next couple of weeks. I will try to as well, and I'll report back to you about those games and what I thought about them the next time I come back with some crowdfunding campaigns that are worth talking about. Until then, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.